Will 034 ever allow any sort of custom tuning files on the B9 platform? Not likely.
Yeah,
We're really not in the custom tuning business.
That's a tricky. I mean, yeah, it's a very difficult thing to support on these vehicles and these ECUs.
It's kind of like asking Chick-fil-A, you know, will you guys ever make like, you know, custom chicken sandwiches by request? It's like,
Well, but it's even more than that because that's assuming you even know how to make the chicken sandwich. Like right now, like to even get into the, you know, actually tuning these things and knowing how to dial it in and how to tune it. It's hard to give just, you know, simple knobs that like a normal
I think this is this question
would be
allowing from them to do it,
right? Yeah. I'm assuming that's what this is. Would be like a, you know, like a end user adjustment.
I think I don't know. We can only interpret, but we interpreting as they want to know
if they want to know if we will do custom,
which we always get requests for.
Right. We do,
and that's where the Chick-fil-A example is like, yeah. I don't know. We have a really good chicken sandwich. There's 3 different versions. They're the ones 99% of all the people want, and so you know the problem with custom files is custom files are a lot of work, right? It's not any more work to do a standard file that you'll sell 1 million of than one-off custom file for Joe Schmuckatelli. Yeah, and so we do the same amount of work for a fraction of the benefit to us as a company.
And it's outside of it. So the other problem is like we have so much testing and R&D that goes into these files and just follow-up stuff and data collection. And you know, we were on track with 3-4 cars yesterday, doing more testing and more data and more, you know, tweaking, and that level of assuredness is basically impossible if we're talking an actual custom file.
Right.
That's not something that we would feel good releasing to the wild in mass.
That's right. That's a big issue. So I would say before we talk about it anymore, I would ask, why do you want custom?
Right.
What's going on?
What are you missing that we're not offering?
Because there's this big trope out there, or a false idea that custom files are better than off-the-shelf tunes. And maybe I'll take a minute to talk about this. This is something that's come up in the past questions. This idea, and this has been propagated extensively by Mario Maleri. I hate to even say this.
Yeah, there's a couple of guys, but for sure.
But him big time is, which is this kind of self-benefiting idea that he doesn't have tuned files. He doesn't have a program, an engineering program like we do. So all he could do, and I don't even know if he's a tuner himself or what he's doing.
He works with someone else for
someone else. But all they can do is custom tunes, right? So of course he's going to go around saying that, you know, custom tunes are the best. Custom tuning and this idea that it's better really comes back from when Nate and I got started, when standalone tuning was popular, and this was, you know, before companies like us were creating custom, you know, factory ECU calibrations. If you wanted to make power in a car, you'd have to switch to a standalone, which means take the factory engine control unit out and put in an aftermarket unit. And when you would receive an ECU from the manufacturer, like from 034 EFI when we got started, we would load a base file on there. This is a generic file to get the car running and started.
Yeah, just core configuration stuff.
But, you know, it would run the car and you could drive it and it would make power and it wouldn't blow your engine up, probably, you know. And so lots of people would get ECUs like this with just kind of generic off-the-shelf files on the ECU. Now, if you took your car to a tuner and they custom tuned it, then you know the ECU would then be customized to all the running characteristics of your engine, all the fuel and timing needs of your specific engine. Typically, you would make lots more power. It would be more drivable. It would be smoother. Everything would be better about the tune and the calibration after the custom tuning. The reason for this is that those standalone ECUs had a fraction, I mean, maybe 1/1,000,000th the processing power and capability.
And just modeling and
of the ECUs that we deal with today, the factory ECUs. So you're literally talking about, you know, a children's toy compared to like space age technology that's that's powering these vehicles today. So those ECUs, they can measure RPM, they can measure manifold pressure, they can measure air temp, water temp. They could do simple oxygen sensor, inputs. You could even put in other inputs like EGT, coolant temp. There's all these different sensor inputs. But then once it goes into the ECU, you have like one little table, a 3D table that can manipulate, for that.
And I mean, there are some extremely advanced, standalone ECUs out there these days.
Yeah.
But
I'm talking about what was going on in the 90s.
Sure.
And so these ECUs lacked capability. So the only way to get them to take into account the differences from engine to engine and vehicle to vehicle was to custom tune them. So that's why, custom tuning was the way to get the best power and performance in the 90s to the 2000s. Those days are over. And now the companies like us that spend days, months, years developing, tuning, and optimizing factory ECU calibration files, we are so far beyond and ahead of what anyone can do in a custom tune in a day or two, or even a week or two on a dyno. Our files are better. They're more developed. They make more power. They're more drivable. They have features and functionality that custom tuners could only dream about.
Yeah, and to be careful on some points there is they make the as much power as we have validated to be a tested, reliable, safe, keep all the parts inside your motor amount of power. You can go out and Hail Mary a file.
Yeah.
It might work for some cars, here and there. And if that's your jam, then that's not something that any tuner should be doing. But there are some out there that'll just turn up a wick and give you some more power because that's what you're asking for.
Yeah. So my hunch was right. He followed up. He says maybe custom tuning is every car is different and will run different with an off-the-shelf tune. So a custom tune made for that specific car, would that not be more beneficial? And the answer is no.
Yeah, these are
based on what the points that I'm making right now.
Yeah, it's really difficult to kind of get your head around the way some of the modern cars or many of the modern cars are mapped. Is these are all torque-based controlled ECUs, even all the way up through everything we're doing. We're not turning off this, the entire torque system and just running X amount of boost for, a given output. So minor deviations and variations in the motor are accounted for, and you're going to get very consistent results across lots of different.
I think that's
there are some that'll be a little different here and there, but it's really smooth.
That's the misunderstanding here is the ECU is accounting for all the differences. So if let's say take your car and the ECU that it came with, and let's run our ECU with the factory ECU with our tune on your factory engine that car came with. That ECU is going to run one way and make a certain amount of power with the engine that you have. Now let's take that engine out. Let's put a completely different engine from a different car. Let's say it's 2 years later. So it's a totally different engine. That ECU is going to run this engine number 2, differently than it runs engine number 1. The timing, fuel curves, and all the engine operating parameters will not be the same between those two numbers. Same ECU, same calibration, 2 different engines. And we can verify this by logging it. In fact, we can do pull after pull after pull and log the ECU, and no pull will ever be the same as the last one. The ECU is changing in real time. Even on engine number 1, it will never provide the same exact fuel timing curve, from one pull to the next. So these ECUs are incredibly advanced. They have tens of thousands of maps that are running the engine at any given time with incredible processing power that cars from 10, 15 years ago never had. So with incredible now this is, I'm talking about all the maps and the processing power, and then behind this you have an incredible amount of modeling, decades.
Modeling is huge on all.
Where Bosch and Siemens, they're doing really in-depth, cutting-edge research on how these engines run, how they operate, how fuel combusts, what combustion does. And all that knowledge and information is built into the models in the ECUs that are running your engine in real time. There's nothing a custom tuner could do in a week or two that an engineering company like us can do in years, right? So there's just a fundamental misunderstanding that Joe Schmuckatelli is going to do something on a dyno somewhere, make a tweak that we already haven't done and taken into account for on this incredibly advanced ECU that has decades of combustion engine running modeling behind it, research. So these are very advanced ECUs. The best thing you can do is put in the time in engineering, add the features and functionality. We're going in and rewriting some of the base code inside the ECUs and to allow these ECUs to essentially double the boost and horsepower of control systems. That was a long answer, but I think it's something that needed to be talked about. We'll definitely clip this.
Yeah, it's not an easy one to answer because there's so many iterations of things that people want to build and put together that there may not be some fully developed package out there for, and that's a tough situation for you. That's about the only time custom tuning might make sense, but you got to be really careful with these modern ECUs when you go that route to have the amount of time invested on that custom tune is going to be really expensive if you actually want the same level of refinement that you're going to get out of something that's been fully developed.